I have a topic, and it's different. It has a lot to do with how the mind works, how the brain functions, and how memory operates. And I kind of want to start off by discussing about what is the earliest memory that you have? Like, how far back does your memory go? Like, there comes a certain point in our life in which, the earliest memories start to kind of just drop off. Or the further back we go, the less perfect our memory is. Of people, of circumstances, of, what was their name again? Or what was happening when we were there? It becomes a little fuzzy, a little less clear, less defined in our minds. Now, I remember studying in school that memories are very unreliable. What that is that memories are not perfect recordings. Right? It's not like you store a recording of an event in your mind and you have to somehow find where that recording went to access it and remember it. That's not how memory works. Memory isn't stored in just one part of the brain. And what happens is the mind uses all these different events that's taking place during that memory. Right, so it's using all your senses, for example. So there's one part of your brain that perceives through sight, and retains that memory, the memory through sight. And another part of your brain will retain another memory associated with the feeling, the tactile sense. Another part of your brain will remember something else that's, maybe regarding taste or smell. Maybe there's a certain emotion, right, that's really strong in that memory. And when you go back to that emotion, you can easily go back to that memory, or the other way around. So there are all these different factors that apply when we're storing a memory. And so there are different parts of the experience. They're kind of being separated into these different little pieces that all come together, which another part of the brain does. It pulls it all together to form a memory. But the actual memory, the past event that you are actually remembering, is happening in the present moment. Think about that. Your past memories are happening in the moment. Your brain is not replaying something. It is reconstructing something. It is creating something. So it's taking all these different pieces from that memory, putting it all together, and kind of putting on a performance in your mind of what potentially happened when that memory took place. So you can see how memories might not be perfect. Or if, you're not paying attention, you're not solely focused in the moment. You're a little distracted. Maybe, you're thinking about something else. So your eyes might be open and they might be watching something, but you're not actually looking at that thing. Or you might not be really listening. So the memory's a little fuzzy because your brain uses all these different parts to reconstruct this memory. So, different pieces, you're not solely present in that moment if your brain is replaying that same event in the moment, but you weren't in the moment before. Right? Your awareness was low. Your awareness of that memory, of the full comprehension of what happened. It can be off. You could be missing something. It could be unclear to you. And similarly, what happens when we have a memory of something that's happened in the past, if you actually look at a scan of the brain when you're remembering something from the past, that same part of the brain lights up when you're using that memory to think about something in the future. So your past and your future that you're constructing in your mind are strictly that, a construct in your mind. The whole world that you're living in is your own internal world. And you can see how your level of awareness plays a big role into that. Being present, having the focus and the discipline of mind. Just paying attention to where your mind goes and what you think about just in your day-to-day life. Because if these past memories, if you weren't fully present, if it's missing something, if there's something that you weren't able to grasp from it, right, you're going to use those past experiences, those past memories, to forge your new future. I know the point is not to live in the past or to live in the future, but a lot of people do. And what happens is when they're not fully present, when they don't have the awareness of mind, and they've gone through these terrible experiences or, these old habits and patterns, even though it's not a habit or a pattern that they want to keep in their life, because they don't have that full focus, that discipline, that self-control, to be completely present. Or even just to be aware when you're not being present. That shapes your future. Because the world is your own internal world. You're constructing it as you go, so to speak. And I know there are many aspects of life that life constructs for you. But I'm saying how you interact with the world plays a big role in your own happiness, in your own enlightenment. Now, can you imagine if you have these imperfect memories? There have actually been documented studies, right, of false memories being implanted into people. Because that's how fragile, and that's at the same time how flexible the mind is, how memories are. Since it's not a recording, and since it takes all these different pieces, you can kind of implant a memory, some kind of association, and make it seem real to that person. So much so that the mind actually decides to take that information and put it in the actual memory. So whatever knowledge, whatever information, even if you hear a story from somebody else, right, your associates, who you associate with, the people you have in your life, right, how you engage with those people, they create impressions upon you. Now, I'm talking a lot on, the actual brain functioning, but a lot of this has a very spiritual basis. Right? I'm talking in both terms here. Because in all honesty, they're one and the same. But you can see how your interactions with other people, even just reading something, just watching something, can actually implant a false memory or something else that you might not particularly want in your life. But because you decided to partake in that, right, you wasted your time, your energy, doing something that you know wasn't of value or wasn't actually beneficial to you, right? That becomes an impression in your mind that you don't even know the subtle intricacies of how it can work its way into your experience of what happened. There are lots of stories about people who, at the times of tragedy, weren't actually there during the tragedy or the natural disaster, but they have a memory of it, as if they were there, especially as children. That's because they heard all these different stories. Maybe they saw pictures, they saw videos, they saw something played on the news. Maybe they used to go to that place all the time when they were younger. And so all these different parts, the brain puts it all together, and it seems like a real thing. But it's very, very wrong. So can you imagine how wrong we can be about ourselves and our own view of the world? How wrong we can be about the universe, about God. But because we have all these little tidbits of information through past experiences, through old habits, through all these different interactions with life, that even though it's not a conscious process of us pulling all these different pieces together, the mind automatically does it because it's still in our consciousness. It's still a part of us. And so you can see how that dramatically influences who we think we are and who we think other people are, how we think the world is, but we can be utterly persuaded that we are correct. We can be so sure that we're the ones that are right. And this is why, so long as you do not have that heightened level of awareness from a higher level of consciousness, even though you might not know it or know exactly what you might not be perceiving correctly, just know that chances are things are going to change, or things will need to change. The mind will have to be reformatted and reconstructed. And this is why old ideas about the world, even though they worked for us before and we were so certain that they were good for us, might have to fall away, or they might change. They might become something different. Or, if it was really truth, reality, not just our subjective realities that we all live in, but I mean the one true reality, that's permanent. But sometimes on our way to that point, we go through different variations of that, until eventually the concept itself around it disappears and you just become a part of that reality. But just the knowledge, just to know that maybe you're not seeing yourself clearly, that maybe you're judging another person based upon something that isn't who they are. This is why you don't judge people, first of all. You might not know the operations going on behind the scenes in the mind, but ultimately there's something that might trigger a judgment about somebody that has absolutely nothing to do with that person. And it's simply your own mind reflecting upon something else. You're projecting. This is why you don't judge. You might feel so certain about something, and it could be a false memory, a false experience. Now, what happens when you're in this energy? When you're in the presence of someone like Guruji? When you're in the presence of enlightenment? There was something I saw long ago about what makes certain jokes funny. It was just, the theoretical type of discussion, but it was something that I saw long ago that piqued my interest, and I watched it, and it was talking about how, the mind has all these different neural connections, neural pathways, and a lot of it is based upon, your past experiences, everything you've learned in your life, the associations, right? It's a very intricate system in your mind. And so, right, if you're talking to somebody about something, they bring up a certain subject, right? If it's something that you're familiar with, your mind will actually go back to the old memories or to anything that it can possibly grasp. It's like a filing cabinet in your mind, so you actually go, turn around, and start grabbing all the different memories or associations or tastes or smells or everything that the mind can pull that it has associated with that certain thing that somebody mentioned. Say, my son's a doctor. Oh, okay, doctor. Oh, what's my experience with doctors? And then it'll go behind. It won't even be in the present moment because you'll be looking the other direction in your mind, looking at all the filing cabinets, going like, okay, doctor, doctor. So you're not paying attention to the person anymore. You're just reflecting upon your own ideas about that. You're not even interacting with the person anymore. You're interacting with your own perception, so to speak. You're interacting with your own world. It's your own world. And so based upon whatever you're able to pull from those filing cabinets, that's your new perception about what that person is mentioning right now. They talk about a doctor. Oh, I don't like doctors. Why? Because I had a bad experience with this one doctor 10 years ago. And it's not like you're thinking about, 10 years ago of that bad experience. But it's made such an impact in your mind that every time the word doctor comes up, you just go back to those feelings of, ooh, I don't like that. Or anything. So what happens is, what makes certain jokes funny? And I love this topic. So what happens is the mind starts traveling down. You start a joke, like for example, there's, if you've heard the joke, why did the chicken cross the road? And so you can imagine that the first time that joke ever came up, the first person that ever thought of that joke, thought that how the mind would work in trying to understand, well, why did the chicken cross the road, right? It's such a simple scenario, but it's at the same time strange, right? We're talking about a chicken crossing the road. Why is it important that a chicken would cross the road? So the mind starts, overcomplicating things. Tries to understand, well, why did the chicken cross the road? Somebody just asked, do you know why the chicken crossed the road? And they're like, what is this? A chicken crossing the road, why is that important? Well, okay, let's find out. And it tries to overthink and overcomplicate everything. And then the answer to get to the other side. Of course. But it's not the direction the mind was going. And so the whole idea that it's both expected and unexpected. Because that person knew that that very question, that very questioning of why did the chicken cross the road would overcomplicate the mind, and to give a simple answer would be funny. But what makes it funny? Like, how does the mind actually think it's funny? It's because the mind actually uses, right, energy, and it kind of directs this energy down a certain pathway that's already established in your brain, in your mind. You can say it's an old habit or an old pattern. I'm using keywords here for you to remember. Okay. So the mind starts traveling down this old pathway, and it starts looking for the most practical or expected, or maybe even not so practical, but something that, we can relate to because it's our own experience. So maybe not practical at all. And so it starts using this energy, and it's like building up this energy because it's traveling down this direction. And so it starts going down one pathway thinking, okay, this is the answer, this is the solution to this question, this problem, because the brain obviously tries to solve problems by overcomplicating things. So it tries to, solve this problem. Why did the chicken cross the road? And it thinks of, okay, here are potential answers, and it goes down those roads of those potential answers. But then something else comes up that's not expected. So the energy can't go down that direction anymore. It can't go down that pathway. But it has to go somewhere. You built up all this focus and this power that's being traveled that way. The energy has to go somewhere. So it literally just is like an explosion. It's a release of energy. And sometimes depending on where it goes in the brain, it can just cause you involuntary laughter. That's the scientific explanation behind it, is it goes into, maybe one of the motor pathways. They're not really sure of what happens, but they know since it can't go down that path, it just kind of explodes somewhere else. And that makes it funny. That's why we start laughing. Even though it's such a simple and, foolish joke. But it's funny. Now, if you apply the same concept to our whole construct of who we are, of how the world works, of our place in the world, of other places in our own world, other people in our world, places, things, repetitious interactions, anything, when something changes. It's like an explosion of energy. It's a release. So in order to change an old habit, an old pattern, you need energy. But you can also see how much energy you waste living these old habits and these old patterns and these old paradigms that have absolutely no benefit for you anymore, if they ever did. You can see everybody, otherwise you wouldn't be alive. You have some level of power and energy. You need energy just to be alive. When I'm talking about energy, that's, to put it simply in my terms, it's just God's presence. But you need a certain level of energy just to be alive, for your heart to beat. So not you beating your own heart. God's doing that. God is the doer. So you can see how when you're not really connected to that presence that's inherent, innate in all people, you don't have a lot of energy to use. You don't have access to a lot of power. You don't have power to make changes in your life, to have a heightened level of awareness, to make good decisions. To make things happen. So you can say that's the lower consciousness. You don't have enough access to that energy and that power. Yeah, you've done something right to be here. By grace of God. You're here where this being literally transmits consciousness and awareness to you. And if you can use that power, that energy that you've been empowered with, to focus the mind, to make changes in your life, to have the awareness of the places and the circumstances where things are going wrong, to recognize why it's going wrong, and to work to making it right again. To changing something. Even if you only change one thing. Sometimes it sets one thing, because like I said, the brain is such an intricate system, or you could say the mind is such an intricate system that that one thing has the potential to change a lot of other little things. And might even cause a big change. But when that one thing changes, you become empowered yourself. You create your own empowerment through God's grace, right? This is all God's doing. We are not the doers. That's where a lot of transformational leaders and a lot of people who have, had a lot of power, maybe from past lives, or, they've done something and they've gained a lot of power, but their ego got in the way and they started thinking, oh, I did this. It's through my special trick, my special technique, this certain way of doing this. I've discovered something new, or I found the latest new technology in how to change your life. That they completely overlook the part that God has to play in it. That God is the doer. That every gift, every new change, everything that you have in your life has happened because God willed it to be so. The power that you're using is not your power. It's the presence of God. It's God's power. It doesn't belong to you. Your own life doesn't belong to you. And that can either really terrify somebody or really just make them, oh, thank God. But you can see how when you make a shift in your life, when you change something, when you go in a different direction that you never went before, when you break an old pattern or an old habit, because you've been empowered, because you've been on these workshops, because you've been getting these blessings, these energy transmissions, whatever you want to call it, it's God ultimately. That when you're empowered with this, right, you can make change in your life. A lot of people, when they don't have access to this, it's like they live the same life day in and day out until they die. And you're like, why don't they do something different? It's because they just don't have the awareness. They don't have the power to do that. Because even awareness requires power. It requires energy. And let's face it, a lot of us waste power and energy. It goes to waste because of all these different intricacies. There are all these different neural pathways and connections that the energy goes down, and it's a waste. It's a waste of your emotions. It's a waste of your memories. It's a waste of your interactions. I say more often than not, it's a waste of your emotions. When you're too emotionally involved in things, you're using energy. And a lot of times you have very little to no control of your emotions. It's just like, it's like you're pouring water into a glass that has no bottom. It's just like, it just goes everywhere. So you're trying to, direct this energy because you don't have the control, the self-control, the discipline to control your emotions, to control yourself. It just spills over and it's a waste. And you can't make a change. You can't do something different. You can't reformat your life. So when you have these empowerments, this grace, you can use it to make a change. But it does require discipline, and it does require focus and self-control. It requires balance. Balance in your life. In all aspects of your life, you need balance. That's one of the most common things that I see is a lot of people, or people who are following a spiritual path. I don't want to say they're necessarily spiritual. They might call themselves spiritual, but when they're on a spiritual path, a lot of times you'll see them, they have a very imbalanced life. And more often than not, a lot of them have great financial troubles. Or they're over-emotive. Right? They don't have the willpower, the self-control to take action and do something in their life, the motivation to get something done, but they think that they want to live in this ethereal, woo-woo world and just, love all the time. And that's not the case. And you know how much I love love. Everything requires balance. That doesn't mean you love less. That's not what I'm talking about. You love more, definitely. More than you can even understand or comprehend. Or that I can comprehend. But you're living in this world. You have a house, you have a mortgage, you got to pay taxes. You have, ambitions, aspirations, whatever it is. You want to do something good for the planet. A lot of people I hear want to do a lot of good things. That's great. But if your own life is imbalanced, if you have all these different problems running rampant in your own life, right, you have to live by example. If you can't take control of your own life, how are you going to help anybody else? How are you going to do anything for anybody? And again, it's not you. Because to create a pathway, to create a new pattern, a new way of doing something, right, you have to have the control and the discipline to keep at it. You can't just do it once and say, okay, I did it once, and then everything falls away, and then you revert back to old habits. It's because those pathways are more established in your mind than the new one you're trying to create. You have to keep doing it. It requires discipline. It requires consistency. The Guruji, he's doing 99.99% of the work. Right? He's connecting you to God, to that divine presence, so you can have the power, the will to make change, to make a decision to do something different. Right? He's heightening your awareness. That's 99%. Is Guruji administering this to you and you being able to be receptive to it? And sometimes even that receptivity on its own requires you to develop the mind. Because to gain more power, you have to have wisdom. You have to have the right application of it. Wisdom is purity. Right? What are you in it for? If you're in it for selfish reasons, you might get a lot of things that you want, and that's great, but you won't be fulfilled or happy by it. But you'll have a lot of nice things. Or, maybe you'll have you can change your life, and it'll be a better life. But if you're looking for something more, for that ultimate fulfillment, like, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Everybody's purpose is enlightenment. I don't care what anybody says, what's my life's purpose? Why am I here on this planet? It's the same for everybody. I can guarantee you that. It's to become enlightened. When you get there, do what you like. Well, God will do everything through you. But why are you here? What's your purpose? Or why do you think you're here? Every time you release an old idea, you give up something, you let go of something that you've been holding on to for a long time. About, even, like I see a lot of this, people's ideas about spirituality and what a spiritual master is changes all the time being around Guruji. Because they're so used to seeing, some man in a robe with, long beard and long hair who says things that please you all the time and make you happy and feel good. And then you have Guruji who says, bastard! And everybody panics because there's an explosion in their brain and they don't know what to do. They're like, wait, what? But he has all these signs, but he says bastard all the time. So what? That's why I love Guruji, because he literally says things so confrontational to what a lot of people actually believe is spiritual or is God or is, what love is. Because let's face it, a lot of people don't actually feel love, it's more like the want to love or the love of love, but they don't actually feel the love yet. But they have a love of love. Or they think they do. And so they're like, that's not how someone should behave if they're truly enlightened. And you don't know. You're not enlightened. And sometimes it's such a shock to the system. It's like, why did the chicken cross the road? the mind starts getting overcomplicated, thinking, wait, but I thought it was this, and I thought it was this, and it was really just, it wanted to get to the other side. And that's the same, it's like the same thing that happens. Like the mind is starting to go down this path thinking like, oh, I'm going to sit with him and just listen to him talk all the time. He's going to say how evolved I am in consciousness and how spiritual I am. It's going to be great. And then they come there and they're like, you bastard idiot. And they're like, oh no, this isn't right. But you start questioning everything. You question your whole reality, the interaction of who you are, and suddenly you're placed in like Alice in Wonderland. You're in this whole wonderland and you don't know what's happening. You're just questioning everything. Even the teacher, you're questioning the teacher. When you're able to finally release that, let go of it, try something new with consistency, if you want to really hold on to that. Right? You have to constantly apply energy. You have to apply your willpower. You have to keep applying yourself. And then you can make that change last. Otherwise, it's a temporary benefit. Right? God's grace is the fact that you have the power to begin with. The willpower is God's grace. Now, if you can use that with sincerity, with honesty, with the best wishes in your own heart and mind, you'll be amazed at the magic that'll happen, the transformation that'll ensue. Old patterns, old habits, old ideas, old ways of living that you thought would never go away, that you thought were who you were, or are. They're not who you are, but through the grace of God, if you can really just make a decision. And then the power will support you, that power that you've been given. It'll uplift you, it will carry you forward. You have to have the discipline and the control over yourself. To direct it to an extent. And that direction is even if you don't feel that love or you don't feel like you have that purity, just to even make the decision that you want that. And you will do what it takes to become that. And you actively engage yourself. You put your whole mind, your whole focus, your whole attention. You act with your full God-given awareness. You will be supported. This light, this grace will support you. And when you actually make the change, it's a testament to your own purity. It's like when you release an old pattern, an old way of living, and you realize that there's something new that you didn't know even existed before. Right? You didn't even see it before because you were so focused and you were so sure that this is the way that life was being lived. And this was who you were. So you're expending all this energy on things that have no value or use to you. But when you're able to focus that and with true sincerity and devotion to a higher purpose other than yourself. Or even just to be a better version of yourself. Right? Intention does help to direct the path. It's that wisdom. That you will gain when something's released. It's like the explosion in your mind. It's like God supports you. You have more energy, more empowerment to do more things, to take more action. You have a greater awareness than you ever did before because you were so tunnel visioned that you didn't see all these other opportunities. And when you broke that old pattern or that old habit, right, you left that tunnel. And you can see that there are different ways to do things. That there's a new way to feel about something. There's a new way to perceive something or to even not perceive anything at all. It's just a new life. And honestly, it's that first experience of that, when you've touched that grace, right? You've had that true experience for the first time, right? That's not a memory. Right? When you have a moment in which you touch upon truth, it's not a memory. Right? It's like you're touching upon the one reality that pervades all realities. That one truth, and that is something that is consistent and is eternal. It is not temporal and it doesn't go away. It becomes a part of you. It becomes who you are because you're touching upon God itself, Himself. And when you touch upon that, you're filled with more energy, more power. Keep going. And you can use that to make more shifts and changes in your life. Again, a lot of it is where you apply your whole heart and mind. It's the decision itself. A lot of people just think that they don't have to do a single thing. And while it's true, God is the doer. God does everything. God makes the shifts. It's not you that does anything. But there is a level of action that you still have to take because you are a part of God. You can make shifts in your reality and you can make things go faster. And when you really take action and do it with the purest of intentions, you are supported. I gave this example. I started talking about it on our last fire ceremony when everybody came here to Las Vegas, but I was in Italy, the last few months ago. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Sistine Chapel. It's where Michelangelo painted this incredible mural of, all the different, major events from the Bible, from the creation of mankind to Judgment Day, woo, etc. Just everything. It's incredible. But there's one part that a lot of people are more familiar with than all the others, and that's the image of God, who, funnily enough, is this man with long gray hair and a long beard, because he's very old. I mean, he created the universe, he has to be old, doesn't he? And these long flowing robes, and he's like reaching out, like you can see, he emotes power. Right? He is power. You could just see from the way he's painted and from, even the ripples of his muscle and the movement. And like Michelangelo was incredible with anatomy. So like he could really demonstrate things simply through, how the body is presented. He was very skilled at that. It was a gift. He was very gifted. And so you see God, he's like pointing, he's like trying to touch, and you see on the other side, what is he trying to reach for? He's trying to reach for Adam, mankind, so to speak. He's trying to make contact. He has his fingers outstretched, and he's really going for it. Like his whole body is like, it's almost like every part of him is pointing with that finger, reaching. And this is the part that cracks me up. Because you see that and you're like, oh wow, look at him, he's really going for it. And then you look at the other guy, you look at mankind, and mankind is literally just like leaning back. Like one arm is like on a sofa. He's not on a sofa, but it looks like he's just leaning back on a sofa. And like just one hand is just like, I'm not sure. He's pointing. Sorry, don't point. But like his hand is like bent, and he's leaned back. Like he's like, this sounds good, but you come a little closer. I'm not going to make the effort, right? You come closer, and God is already reaching with every part of him. Like the full body's just forward and reaching, and he's just kind of leaning back a little and just relaxed and like, he'll come to me eventually. That absorption with self, with I'm too comfortable, or complacency. I don't want to do anything different. I don't want to shake things up. Things could be better, but I'd have to do something different. I'd have to let go of something. I'd have to give up something. I'd have to expend energy that I'm not willing to expend on this. Because it's just not of value. It's not of importance to that person in that moment. And that's fine for them. You can say it's not their destiny. Whatever you want to phrase it. And another part of the image is you see that God, where God is coming out of, it's not a cloud in the sky, or it's not even the sky itself. Though a lot of people, they haven't looked at it in detail enough to really see where God is emerging from. But when you see the structure around the image, the painting of God, you see it's actually the human brain. It's the mind reaching out. It's saying change is accessible. It's available. Right? You're given the power to do that. God is reaching out. You're on these calls, right? You're with Guruji, who literally just uplifts your awareness. Just to be on this call, you're being uplifted. You're being transported to another world, a new reality, where new ideas and concept, new everything is being presented to you. And if you can apply this power that you've been gifted, if you can just focus, have the discipline, make a decision to do something better with your life. And it doesn't matter at what point in your life you're at. Even if you feel like I've lived the majority of my life and, I don't have much left, right? It's kind of late for me to start. No, it's not. That's another illusion of the mind. A construct that we've created, this pathway that says that things end, that death is the end. That old age is when, things start to decline. Everything. You can see how when you don't have the awareness, when you're not fully present, how much these little intricacies, these subtle impressions from the ego, from all these past experiences, from teachers, from relationships, from these old conditionings that we've had, and then these old, we could say the fate and fortune that we've brought into this lifetime. How when all these things are combined and then we just on top of it, we don't have that discipline, that self-control, and that awareness to really focus the mind. Or even just to be completely absorbed in God. Right? We spend our time, we invest our time and our energy in trivial, unimportant things that don't matter and just make us feel exhausted in the end. And we say, why do I keep doing that? So you can see how these little impressions that we get, especially over time, become so ingrained as a part of who we are that it's not even a decision in our mind. It's just something that we go to. Because science says that the mind actually happens faster than our own conscious awareness of how our mind is thinking, right? Our mind is always one step ahead because it's trying to get ahead of a problem. It's always trying to solve something, like life is this great mystery that it has to solve. So it's always leaping ahead, it's not fully present, and it's always on top of that because you don't have that awareness, that conscious focus. Right? The mind is utilizing all this garbage of past information to try and decide, I can feel problems coming up, what are all our experiences with this problem? All of the relative, circumstances, scenarios, every single thing that I have in these filing cabinets, even has to do with water. What do I have, back here related to water, related to this person, related to, relationships, related everything. It's like an instant, a flash, and it's not even something that we're fully present and aware of when it happens because it just grabs it and it's one step ahead all the time. And a lot of people, they just go with it instead of recognizing it when it happens that, oh, this is projecting, or oh, I'm making a rash decision. I'm not taking the time to, calmly decide or, truly feel intuitively, like, is this the right path? Am I doing the right thing? They just go with some rash decision, with something based upon their emotions. Right? They're very reactionary. They just react. because they don't know enough about themselves. But for some reason, they feel like they can make the best decision for themselves, even though they don't know a lot about themselves. Not really. When it comes to meeting someone like Guruji, they don't want to just admit that I could be wrong about something, because they feel like, it's my life, I know what's best. Sometimes it's required that we feel uncomfortable, especially when you're facing your ego, your own selfishness, your own self-absorption. And that starts to fall away, because it will when you're truly on this path. And you're going for it, it will fall away through grace of God. But you will feel uncomfortable. And a lot of people, when they feel uncomfortable, they run. Instead of focusing on the outcome, the end goal, what is the purpose? Instead of looking at the live example in front of them and seeing, no, this is God. I know it. Like, I can't pinpoint it in my mind. I can't, factually or intellectually understand it, but I know that God is here, that I've been touched upon by God, by the grace of God. I know you know it. That's why you're here. You're still here. But so long as you're living in that subjective world, where your own internal world, it's a separate reality. So it's really a requirement that you have a teacher, you have somebody that you can actually just surrender to. Not to a person per se, but to God. But sometimes it requires you to have that person there. And for you to really just start to fall in love with that being, that person, to really just fully give yourself to that person. Then you start to really see that it's not a person, it's God. But sometimes people go through those steps first. They don't see God immediately, but they know that there's something there, and they can see the example that that person is living, right? They can see, the life that they lead, how they're assisting the world, the miracles that are transpiring all around, just by watching the live example. That's why I say it's not enough to talk about it. You have to change yourself. That's the best way to change the world. It's not like my life is a mess, but I can still help other people. I mean, that's a good mindset, that you want to help other people, but you have to live through example. That's the best way to show and demonstrate to other people that there's another way to life. If you want to earn a lot of money, you don't go to somebody who's poor. It's just a fact. You don't go to somebody who's lost all their money to find out how to gain money. You find someone successful, some incredible businessman or woman, somebody who's done something with their life and has a lot to say for it. If you're looking for enlightenment, you go to somebody who's enlightened. It's the same concept. And you dedicate yourself to the teaching, to truth. And it's not a matter of, trying to persuade yourself that you're perfect, because let's face it, none of us are perfect. When we really look at it, we have a lot of problems. We have a lot of imperfections. But to completely ignore them is just pure ignorance. Because if you want to address them, if you want to change them, you can't ignore them. But you can't be afraid to look at them either. You can't be afraid to look at yourself and see, I have some problems, I have weaknesses, and it's okay. It's okay because I know I want to do something better. I know I want to be a better person. And then using the power that you have, the empowerments you've been given, and following the teaching and going, okay, I'm going to take action and I'm going to do something different right now. And keep doing it. Consistency is key. Right? Then you literally are pulled into a whole other reality. And you'll see lots of yourselves and lots of things that you might not have even thought you had before. Lots of different qualities and characteristics that you thought didn't exist with you. That you thought, oh, I thought I was so much holier than I really am. You start looking at yourself, you're like, wow, I have a lot of problems. And it's okay because you admit and you acknowledge them. Because you know nobody's perfect. You're in a safe zone. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect. What truly matters is your sincerity. Sincerity is caring. It is dedication. It is loyalty. It is love. You'll do what it takes. Because you know that there's something more to this world. There's something more perfect. You have to face all those parts of yourself and accept them, ironically enough, to let them go. If you're always looking at the other way, it's not that you're ignoring them and they go away. It's that they actually, because you don't have your attention or your awareness, you're not developing it. You're not paying attention to the things that are on fire around you. You have to actually face the fire and pour water on it, right? But if you're panicked too, if you're afraid of it, if you don't know what to do, if you don't have the water to pour on it, which is the power, the grace of God, like you can't do anything. You lose control, you start panicking, you start screaming, running around, more things catch on fire, eventually the whole building goes down, it's just a mess. So you have to face it calmly, acknowledge it that yes, that exists with me. And don't let it overpower you. Because the very essence of what you are a part of God. God will support the pure of heart. Always. One of my favorite sayings is, those who seek God will surely find her. Truly. You have to have faith in the process of life. Know that whatever awareness you have, whatever is within your realm of ability to do, if you can muster up whatever power you have and attempt to change, make a decision that this is something that you will change in your life, and you do it. With full dedication, full sincerity, you're always supported. Always. Because like I said, the whole purpose of life is enlightenment. It's to find God. And the journey for that is different for every person. And sometimes people need to go through different steps. They need to do things with their life. They need to achieve something. Even if it's just, something within this realm, within the material world. If they do something, they achieve something, they make something with their life. They have something that they do every day that makes them feel purposeful. It energizes you. Right? You feel good. You gain power from that. You could say the same thing, like a lot of people who are financially unstable, it's very difficult for them to really focus on God, even though they're the spiritual people, a lot of them. Now, spiritual people doesn't necessarily mean you're on a spiritual path. There are many people who you can say are very highly evolved people who have a very evolved consciousness who are not on a spiritual path. So don't make a judgment about anybody. You don't know. This path is not linear. It doesn't go on a direct path, and it's not like things happen in a very sequential order. It's not like first you learn this, then you learn about that, then this happens, then that happens. Right? It's a unique path for everybody. Because you're facing your own reality. You're not facing mine or somebody else's. So something that you might have already understood, that might seem simple or common sense to you, might not seem like common sense or something simple to another person. But at the same time, that does not mean that that person is less evolved than you are. That they haven't done the work in other parts of their life, that they haven't experienced or had moments of truth with other things. Maybe not the specific thing that you've understood. But it's not a linear path. It doesn't happen in a very specific order. And that's also why it's so important to have faith in the process of life. Because if you don't have a point of comparison, you kind of feel lost. If you don't have a reference point to say, well, this person I know is this evolved and they've learned this, this, and this. I haven't learned that, that, and that, so I'm not as evolved as they are. Right? There's no point of comparison. Not when it comes to actual comparison with another person. It's strictly your own relationship to God. It's your own connection, and that's it. And I can say that a majority of the time, the people who are doing really well, who are truly in it, for true, pure, and sincere reasons, they know it. Those who aren't doing enough, or those who feel like they could be doing more, they know it. A lot of times they really do know it. That's important to look at too. Don't ignore it. Don't be like, I've been lazy, I haven't been, taking action, I haven't been doing anything, I haven't been motivated, or just to look at it, like I said, just to acknowledge it, just to have the awareness itself that that is something that exists within you. It starts something going, just to have the awareness itself. But it's so important to have somebody who can administer these blessings, who can give you this light, give you this energy, because it evolves your awareness. It's like consciousness and awareness itself is being transmitted to you. Right? When you're on these calls, when you're listening, when you're fully focused, fully disciplined, a lot of people say, things just click. I just suddenly understand something I didn't understand before. And sometimes when they're off these calls, those things fade away or they forget about them. When you have that click, when you have that newfound awareness, right, if it's something that you can apply, use it. It's like you're being shown there are other ways and other paths to do things and to live life because you didn't see them before. You weren't aware that they even existed. You had no idea. And suddenly you're here, you're being transported somewhere else in a whole other world, a whole other reality, and then you're suddenly like, oh my God, I never saw it that way before. Awareness. I never saw it that way before. I get it now. And even those I get it now, it's like you could get something, you feel like you understand it, and then that understanding falls away. You're like, oh, I didn't understand it, but then something else replaces it, even stronger than before, but eventually everything falls away. But your actual interaction with truth is what becomes stronger. Your faith. Because when your mind is illuminated, when you're in that, a higher oscillation, a higher vibration, whatever you want to call it, a higher state of awareness, a higher consciousness, it doesn't matter the life that you're leading, the life that you're in, not necessarily. Whether you have things or you don't have things, whether you have a partner or you don't have a partner. Whether you have what you want or you don't. You're still happy. It doesn't really disturb your peace. And like I said, if you're in a very low consciousness, very low oscillation, and your mind's not in that place. It's not illumined. It's in a very dark world. It doesn't matter what you have. If you're miserable now, and you're trying to do something in your life, and you think that it'll make you happy if you get this thing or you get that person, I mean, true, doing something and having achievements, it can give you more empowerment, but if you're in a dark place, it's not going to fulfill you. You could have everything you want, and if you're in that dark place, if you're in that low level of consciousness, you'll be miserable and have everything you want. I'm telling you right now that change is possible. And the potential for enlightenment is possible for everybody. You can go as fast as you want. Just what are you willing to do? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to change about yourself? What are you willing to let go of? Are you willing to care more for others than you do for yourself? Because really, enlightenment is not about yourself. Which is kind of funny because a lot of people, really want enlightenment because they think they'll be happy. And they will be happy, but it's not about yourself, so it's not about you being happy, really. Because there's no you left. You've given it all up. But it's that willpower, it's mankind, the will to reach. To not waste it on trivial things. Don't get too emotionally involved in other people, caught up in their stories and their lives. It's a waste of your own energy too. You can have compassion for other people. Like the moment I heard this and it clicked, I used to get really emotional about a lot of people. It's not about feeling emotional, like you hear somebody's story and it's not about being emotionally involved. It's, God is taking care. But you can have compassion for the struggle they're going through to get there. You can have compassion, that's fine, but to get emotionally involved in that level, it's wasting your own energy, your own power. If somebody's else miserable, what's the purpose of feeling miserable with them? Right? If you've been having a good day and somebody suddenly, comes to you and they've been miserable, you can have compassion that they're, going through time of misery. Yeah, of course, it'd be great if they could be happy. And if there's anything in that moment that you can do that'll make them happy, that'll be great too. But to bring yourself down with them, to get emotionally involved in that way in which you actually start to feel depressed yourself, or frustrated or angry, it's just ridiculous. You're wasting so much of your life. But I notice a lot of people feel when somebody comes to them like this, that it's almost like an empathetic thing that, but I have to feel emotional, I have to feel upset with them to show them that I care. But you can't help them if you're miserable with them. It's not caring. By bringing your own energy, by bringing yourself down, you can't help anybody. If you're in a lower consciousness, you can't help anybody. You live by example. You don't be miserable with them, you show them the beauty. And of course, it's not like, you can just show it to them and they can see the beauty, but you plant a seed, you do something, you live by example, right? You demonstrate true caring, true devotion, true love, true happiness, true peace, true contentment, whatever it is. People don't learn by being told something. They learn by interaction, by having the actual experience, by actually doing that thing. So when you're interacting with somebody who's happy, it's almost like, well, it's not like a learned behavior. It does something. It creates a shift in that person. Because like Guruji says, energy flows from a higher vibration to a lower vibration. When you're in a higher vibration and those who are in the lower vibration are around you, people say all the time, like, when I'm around, I feel like people are magnetized to me. Like a lot of people just start coming to me, or they start talking to me, or, they're so much more friendly with me, or, they're happier. It wasn't that way before, but after being in this energy and getting these blessings, they started noticing that. It's the concept, higher vibration goes to lower vibration. Those around you, they feel the shift, the change. They feel that there's something and they want. You have to be careful with too sometimes, but you can't just go throwing away your energy, because then you have nothing left for yourself. You have to live by example. I mean, there's so much beauty and there's so much love in this world. You just haven't seen it yet. You haven't experienced it yet. Maybe you've had a taste, but there's so much. To just know that there's more out there, that there's a more perfect world, more perfect reality. And if you can give everything, you have to try and bring yourself there. And have faith in the process of life. Those who seek God will truly find her. Things will literally just fall away. You worried this would happen, it falls away. You feared this would happen, it falls away. Or sometimes it comes to be and it passes and you're like, I was afraid of that. Truly have faith. If you really want it and you give it your all, you'll get there. Eventually you will get there. Power, wisdom, balance, laughter, lightheartedness. You'll get there.